What
Are you
is
willing
it?
to break every rule you live by to save an absolute
Just tell
stranger?
me.
That was the question of destiny for Chloe, an 8-year-old street warrior
It's all right.
forged by the cold streets of Seattle. Her law was simple: stay invisible. But one rainy night, a desperate cry pulled her from the shadows, forcing her to face Ethan, a 12-year-old tortured and broken-legged boy, escaping a living hell. That single act of courage didn't just save one life. It ripped open a 7-year-old secret surrounding a high-profile kidnapping and a vicious conspiracy rooted within the family of powerful CEO Jonathan Sterling. Who was the traitor posing as a doctor? Who was the angel that children feared more than the traffickers themselves? And most horrifyingly, what if the true mastermind was the Godfather, the family's most trusted friend? This is the story of two orphaned children who had to fight the entire world to reclaim justice and redefine the word family. Join me on this journey of light and shadow, where the bravery of a homeless girl rescued an empire and the heart of a broken father. Don't look away, because what you are about to witness will change how you view trust and betrayal. October's fury had descended upon Seattle. It wasn't the romantic drizzle, but heavy ice-cold drops that fell like bullets, turning the alley behind Murphy's restaurant into a river of mud. The murky yellow glow of the flickering street lamp cast dancing specters on the wet brick wall, a place where light was devoured rather than reflected. Chloe huddled beneath a torn piece of cardboard, the smell of mildew garbage and old fear clinging to her like a second skin. Her formerly bright blonde hair, matted with mud and rainwater, obscured most of her angular face. She was only 8, but 3 years on, the street had taught her one harsh truth: the world was a hunting ground, with no room for weakness. Chloe's law was simple, a commandment she had carved into her very bones: never interfere. Don't be seen. Don't make trouble. Trouble would kill her. Never do anything that could drag her into someone else's tragedy. She clutched half of a ham sandwich she'd fought a tenacious sewer rat for the faint sour taste of rot, a reminder of the fragility of life. Then it came. It wasn't a police siren nor the drunken brawl of the homeless. It was a thin, broken sound, piercing through the drumming rain and the whistling wind, a choked sob. At first, Chloe thought it was a wounded animal, perhaps a dog hit by a car. But then it repeated, and this time it carried the unmistakable raw timbre of absolute terror. The chill that ran through her wasn't from the temperature, but from the violation. Someone was pleading. Her instinct, the harsh training of the streets, screamed at her to retreat deeper into the shadows, cover her ears, and wait it out. Every second she lingered was a betrayal of the lonely years that had kept her alive. Yet something about that sound, the primordial, unconcealed desperation of a hurt child, froze her body. It touched a wound. Chloe never allowed herself to feel the ache of abandonment. Chloe took a deep breath of the metallic, rain-scented air and decided to move. She crawled out of her hiding spot, the cold wetness instantly soaking her skin. She craned her neck around the corner of the piled-up dumpster. It was a boy, maybe 11, possibly 12, and he was dragging himself. His clothes were ripped to shreds, plastered to his skinny, filthy body. His face was badly bruised, a deep cut on his forehead, bleeding and mixing with the rain, leaving shimmering red streaks on the concrete. But the most horrifying sight was his legs. They were twisted at unnatural angles, one knee swollen almost to the point of rupturing. He wasn't attempting to run. He was crawling, pulling his body weight with his scraped elbows. "Please!" His voice was hoarse, cracking with panic. "Please, don't hurt me. I can't walk." It wasn't the usual plea for mercy. It was the desperate cry of someone who had been tortured. Chloe stepped fully out of the shadows, rainwater streaming down her face. I'm not them, she whispered, her voice naturally trembling from disuse. The boy's eyes widened. They held none of the hostility or coldness Chloe was accustomed to on the street. They contained a pure, uncontrolled horror, as if he had seen the very depths of hell. No, they'll come back, the boy screamed, trying to back away with his hands. The scent of his fear was sharp and acrid, assaulting Chloe's sensitive sense of smell. Hey, it's okay, Chloe said, holding out a hand. I'm just a kid, too. The simplicity of the statement seemed to calm the frantic edge in his eyes slightly. He stared at Chloe, at her matted blonde hair, her oversized jacket, her dirt-smudged face. He recognized the truth. Chloe knelt down, ignoring the filthy water seeping through her trousers. What's your name? A long silence. The rain continued to fall. Ethan, he finally forced out, as if his name were a long-forgotten code. I'm Chloe. What happened to you? They'll find me, Ethan repeated, shaking uncontrollably. I just want to go home. Looking at those ravaged legs, looking at the unconcealed despair of a child, clearly held in some awful place, Chloe's hardened heart cracked. She knew loneliness. She knew fear. But Ethan's fear was on a different level. I know a place, Chloe said, making a decision she knew would change everything, possibly ending her invisible existence. It's dry. And it's safe. You have to trust me. At that very moment, a few miles away, atop the skyscraper, known as Sterling Tech, Sterling stood in his penthouse office, completely unaware that his son was crawling in the mud. Jonathan's office was an architectural masterpiece of steel and glass, a cold symbol of power and money. The temperature inside was always perfectly controlled, but Jonathan always felt cold. He was staring at a faded photograph. In the picture, a 5-year-old boy with dark curly hair and brilliant green eyes inherited from his mother, was giggling, his mouth smeared with ice cream and chocolate. Ethan. 7 years, 3 months, and 14 days. It was an old cliché, time heals all wounds. For Jonathan, time had healed nothing. It had only transformed acute pain into a chronic ache seeping through every aspect of his life. His wife, Catherine, hadn't survived the pain. She battled cancer 3 years after Ethan vanished. But Jonathan knew the truth. Her soul had died the day the kidnappers called for ransom, promising to release Ethan, only to break their word. Jonathan was a CEO, an architect of success. He could control the stock market, his employees, and the lives of thousands. But he had failed to control the only thing that mattered, his son's safety. Every night he relived that terrifying moment in his nightmares. Ethan's laughter in the backyard, then the sudden silence, and then the ringing of the phone. He couldn't sleep without sedatives, and when he woke up, he was tormented by the sound of silence from his son's empty bedroom. A knock on the door cut through his torment. Mr. Sterling. His assistant's voice was cautious. Detective Riley is here. Jonathan closed his eyes. Another false call. Another wrong clue. Another cruel dose of hope. He had learned to brace himself for disappointment, building a steel wall around his heart. But he always listened. He always hoped. Detective Riley was a tired man, with eyes that had witnessed too much of the city's cruelty. He wasted no time on pleasantries. Mr. Sterling, 2 nights ago there was a truck accident on Interstate 5. Riley said, his tone heavy. The vehicle belonged to a shell company we've been tracking linked to child trafficking. The driver and guard were unconscious, but there are signs someone got out. Jonathan felt the room spin. Children. Blood traces and torn clothing. The back door was wide open. Riley paused. We found this piece of fabric caught in the latch. He placed a plastic evidence bag on the table, a small, dirty scrap of cloth. Jonathan just stared. 7 years. They say the first 48 hours are the most important, he whispered. We know what they say, Riley said with rare sympathy. But this trafficking ring doesn't kill their hostages. They move them, they sell them. If Ethan was in that truck, if he's out there, hope, pain, and guilt, they all crashed in at once, threatening to overwhelm Jonathan. What do I do? Where do I look? Riley looked him straight in the eye. If he escaped, he's terrified. He trusts no one. He's hiding. Jonathan didn't wait any longer. He grabbed his coat. I'm going with you. While Jonathan was preparing to launch into a frantic hunt, not far away in the darkness and stench of the abandoned storage room Chloe called home, Ethan was trembling after taking a sip of the precious filtered water. Why are you helping me? Ethan asked the question, seemingly his greatest burden. Chloe pulled the single threadbare blanket over both of them. Because I promised myself, she said simply, that if I could, I would help someone else. Don't ask again. Ethan was silent, but then he reached into his torn pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished metal object. Take this, he whispered, his shaking hand touching Chloe's. If they find me before you get back, or if I die, give it to my dad. Tell him I never stopped believing he would come. Chloe took the cold medallion. One side was engraved with a small crown and the words, "To my little prince, love Dad." The other side bore the initials E.S. His name is Jonathan Sterling. Ethan said, his eyes now filled with tears, not of physical pain but of the relief of memory. He's the CEO of a big tech company. He called me his little prince. Chloe looked at the medallion, then into Ethan's haunted eyes. It wasn't a lie. It was the fiercely guarded truth of a child who had survived by clinging to one last keepsake. Amidst the darkness, poverty, and fear, Chloe now held the key to one of the city's most powerful families and a secret 7 years in the making. She knew what she had to do. She had to find Sister Eleanor. But just as Chloe tightened her grip on the medallion somewhere outside the alley, police sirens began to wail, and they were not incidental. They were getting closer. Victor Knox had begun hunting his prey. In the cold storage room, the smell of mildew and metal was now overwhelmed by a far more terrifying scent infection. Ethan's fever had spiked to the point of near delirium, his choked whimpers the only sound breaking the silence of the hideout. His broken legs now hideously swollen, and purple-blue signaled that time was running out. No hospital, Ethan whispered in a feverish daze, clutching Chloe's arm with desperate strength. They have people everywhere. Cops, doctors. That's how they keep us. Chloe looked into his eyes, which were wild with fever and fear. She knew he was dying, but she also knew his fear was justified. Being recaptured was probably worse than death. Chloe had to act. She decided to break her third rule. Never trust people in power, but trust the harmless. Chloe ran to St. Jude's soup kitchen, the place Sister Eleanor ran. Sister Eleanor was a woman with a face full of wrinkles, but her eyes held a non-judgmental warmth. For Chloe, who had lived in invisibility, the nun's acceptance was a lifeline. I need help, sister. Chloe gasped, exhausted from running in the rain. Medical, but no hospitals. Sister Eleanor looked into the girl's desperate eyes. She didn't ask about location or police. She simply nodded. I have someone. Dr. Olivia Vance. She's a volunteer. She doesn't ask questions you can't answer. Sister Eleanor made the call immediately. While waiting, Chloe huddled by the warm stove trying to shake off the cold and anxiety. The warmth, the smell of onion soup, and the crackle of the fire was a comfort she hadn't experienced in years. But the peace didn't last long. The soup kitchen door burst open. 3 large, soaking wet men stormed in. They wore no uniforms, but their demeanor carried palpable danger. "Looking for a kid," the leader, a scarred man, growled, holding a blurry photo. "About 12 hurt leg. Might be with a blonde girl." Chloe quickly crawled beneath the counter. Her heart hammered in her ears. Sister Eleanor didn't flinch. "I serve hundreds of children. You'll need to be more specific." "Our nephew ran away after a family argument." The scarred man said, his voice so cold it negated the meaning of the word family. Sister Eleanor, with quiet defiance, stated, "I haven't seen an injured child. If I do, I will call the proper authorities." The men sneered, but the nun's steady gaze made them back down. "He can't hide forever. Tell him we always get our property back." When the door closed, Chloe crawled out, trembling. She knew with chilling certainty that these were Victor Knox's enforcers. "Sister," Chloe stammered, "we have to call the detective. Right now, before they find Max." Sister Eleanor nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "And we have to find his father, quickly." Detective Riley was sitting with Jonathan Sterling when his phone rang. Minutes later, Jonathan's armored sedan was speeding through the rainy night, heading toward St. Jude's kitchen. At the old warehouse, Sister Eleanor was waiting. She handed Jonathan the tarnished medallion. "The girl said to give this to his father," Sister Eleanor said, her eyes moist, "and to tell him the boy never stopped believing he would come." Jonathan looked at the medallion. "To my little prince." Every steel wall he had built for 7 years crumbled. This was the moment he knew this wasn't false hope. Ethan was alive. Sister Eleanor and Jonathan approached the secret room. Chloe, her sharp blue eyes like knives, blocked the entrance. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice commanding despite her small frame. "He is Jonathan Sterling," Sister Eleanor said, "Maxwell's father." Jonathan pushed past the nun and rushed inside. The room was foul and damp, but Jonathan's gaze was fixed on a single point, the thin, bruised child lying on the floor. Ethan. This child was nothing like the 5-year-old in the photograph. He was a shadow ravaged. But the eyes, those green eyes full of terror and a faint flicker of recognition, were exactly like Catherine's. "Maxwell." Jonathan choked out, his voice utterly broken. He was no longer the CEO. He was just a father. Ethan stared. Tears began to stream down his bruised face. 7 years of lies, of pain, of despair, collapsed with a single look. "Daddy." Ethan whispered, the tiny voice echoing like thunder in the stillness. "Is that really you, Daddy?" Jonathan sank to his knees, heedless of the dirt and debris. He embraced his son, holding the frail body, careful not to hurt the broken legs. He wept. He cried not for Ethan's pain, but for his own guilt. "I have you, my little prince," he sobbed, burying his face in his son's matted hair. "I never gave up on you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Ethan tightened his thin arms around his father's neck. They said you didn't want me anymore. But Daddy, you came. In that moment, the connection severed 7 years ago was fiercely reforged. Dr. Olivia Vance arrived with an emergency medical team, her face elegant and calm. She efficiently splinted Ethan's legs and stabilized his fever, showing professionalism and fierce dedication. Jonathan, in his emotional turmoil, felt a profound gratitude for this woman. Ethan was taken to Seattle General Hospital, a private floor, with its own security detail hired by Jonathan. He no longer trusted ordinary protection. But Victor Knox never played fair. Less than 24 hours after Ethan was safe, a massive explosion rocked the Sterling Tech headquarters. The target wasn't Ethan, but a brutal warning. Jonathan's longtime assistant, Margaret, who had known Ethan since he was a baby, and 2 security guards were killed. Jonathan stood in the hospital hallway looking out the window at the flames tearing into the night sky. All the pain, guilt, and fear vanished, replaced by a cold, unshakable rage. This was no longer about finding his son. This was war. "They want a war," Jonathan growled to Detective Riley. "They'll get a war. I'll use every dollar, every connection to burn their network to the ground." "Chloe, Mr. Sterling, the other kids." Chloe reminded him of the others Ethan left behind. Jonathan looked at the girl, an 8-year-old warrior, who had saved his son when the whole world failed. He knew what he had to do. Ethan was secretly moved to a federal safe house in the northern mountains. Chloe went with them at Jonathan's insistence. In the isolation of the safe house, the bond between Ethan and Chloe began to solidify. Chloe taught Ethan new survival lessons, how to differentiate sounds in the forest, how to find stillness in the chaos, a stark contrast to her urban environment. Ethan taught Chloe lessons in hope, recounting stories and memories of his family. He showed Chloe his childish drawings of the room with the glow-in-the-dark stars. "We're family now, right?" Ethan asked Chloe one night, his legs carefully bandaged. Chloe looked at him. "We're survivors," she said, "and survivors always stick together." But the peace was fragile. Dr. Olivia Vance was also moved with them continuing Ethan's medical care. Her professional demeanor and unwavering devotion reassured Jonathan. But Chloe, with her street instincts, was never fully convinced. "She's too perfect," Chloe whispered to Ethan. "No one in this city is perfect." Just as Jonathan began planning his legal and financial counterattack, Detective Riley called. "Mr. Sterling," Riley said, his voice strained, "we've found 2 more bodies. Both were high-level contacts for Victor Knox. Someone is cleaning house, and they're moving fast." The chilling truth hit home. The threat wasn't just coming from the outside. The enemy was closer. The enemy was watching their every move. The enemy could be anyone. The secluded safe house in the deep woods was supposed to be a sanctuary. But for Jonathan Sterling, it felt like a trap. Since the explosion at Sterling Tech, the air in the cabin had been thick with tension and paranoia. The news from Detective Riley grew worse. 2 more high-level witnesses against Victor Knox had been executed, all professional assassinations. "They're not just cleaning house," Jonathan stated, pacing the small living room. "They're planning. Someone is eliminating every single witness against their takeover." Everyone exchanged glances. Someone had access to police information, to FBI data. Someone within this secured circle was being watched, or worse, was a mole. Riley constantly checked his encrypted phone, his face etched with frustration and helplessness. Ethan, sitting on the sofa with his legs carefully bandaged, heard it all. 7 years in captivity had taught him how to read body language, how to recognize the scent of danger, and he saw the fear in the adult's eyes. "Dad," Ethan said, his voice still weak but void of panic. I want to help. Jonathan stopped looking at his son with anguish. No, Ethan. You've been through enough. It's not enough, Ethan countered, his green eyes blazing. It's experience. I know how they work, how they think. The other kids, the ones who were rescued, they're too terrified to talk. But I'm not scared anymore. It was an astounding shift. Ethan's fear had morphed into fury. He didn't just want to survive. He wanted to fight to reclaim his lost years. Chloe, sitting beside him, gripped his hand, a glimmer of fierce pride in her eyes. She understood that transformation. Jonathan looked at his son, no longer the terrified child in the alley, but a small, wounded warrior. All right, he said, his voice laced with respect and a touch of dread. We'll do it, but you are always protected. The decisive clue came from Emma, one of the rescued children. During intensive psychological therapy, she described a woman, the angel. She smiled a lot, and she smelled really nice, but she scared me more than Mr. Victor Knox, Emma recounted. She was always giving him papers and saying we were healthy. Detective Riley received the photo from the interrogation room. The face of the woman in the picture made his blood run cold. Riley burst into the cabin unannounced. Everyone here. Now that includes Dr. Olivia Vance. Dr. Vance was checking the medications. She turned around, her face elegant and composed. What is it? Detective Ethan's condition is stable. You think I don't know, Doctor? Riley roared, his hand already on his weapon. Or should I call you by your real name, Vance, Victor Knox's sister-in-law? The entire room froze. Jonathan felt as though he'd been punched in the chest. The woman who had cared for his son, who had given him a sense of security, was a traitor. Dr. Vance didn't flinch. The professional warmth vanished, revealing the cold calculation beneath her veneer. Emma was always an overly observant girl, she said softly. Jonathan lunged, but Riley held him back. Why, you helped us. A dead child is useless. A rescued child who trusts me, that's invaluable intelligence, Dr. Vance said, her voice robotic and steady. When the FBI searched Knox's assets, they found financial records, payments into your offshore accounts, millions. Ethan retreated deeper into the corner of the sofa, his eyes staring in horror at the woman who had once touched him so gently. This betrayal was worse than captivity. Trafficking is just business, Dr. Vance continued with an almost pitying smile. It's supply and demand. The system failed these children. We gave them value. You've become the very thing that killed your own daughter, Riley yelled. Perhaps, Dr. Vance conceded. But I am not the one you should worry about. I was merely the middle manager, the one orchestrating everything, the one who killed Knox. He is still out there, and he is closer than you think. She narrowed her eyes at Jonathan. Mr. Sterling, you are being used. Your every move, every resource you mobilize, it all serves his takeover plan. He needs your legitimacy. He needs your charity foundation as a front. Just then, all the lights in the cabin went out simultaneously. The emergency generator didn't kick in. A deadly silence fell, broken only by the sound of the rain outside. They've arrived, Dr. Vance said, her tone almost relieved. Good luck. Marcus Hayes, the security chief, a former SEAL, instantly put on his night vision goggles. Riley, get Sterling and the kids to the panic room. Now. Jonathan shoved Ethan and Chloe into the small, reinforced room disguised as a closet. Riley dragged Dr. Vance, chaining her to a pipe. Marcus Hayes communicated over the radio. Sterling, they're bringing cutting equipment. You have 8 minutes. In the panic room, the air was suffocating. A high-pitched, gruesome screech of metal-cutting equipment began to echo from outside. Ethan looked around. 7 years of survival taught him to find the escape route. "Dad," he whispered, pointing to a high ventilation shaft on the wall. "That duct. It leads out to the Federal Ranger Station 2 miles away. You said it was the escape hatch." "No way, son, your legs." Jonathan was distraught. "I can crawl. I've crawled before." Ethan said, the determination in his eyes making Jonathan truly see his son's strength for the first time. "Dad, the local police are compromised. We need federal help. This is the only chance." Chloe immediately stood up. "I'm going with Ethan. I know these woods better than anyone. I'm quick. We'll make it." Riley looked at his watch. 6 minutes. "Jonathan, your son is right. We can't wait for rescue." With a shattered heart, Jonathan used a crowbar to pry open the vent grate. He placed Ethan into the cramped, dirty space. "I'll come back. I promise," Jonathan said, hugging his son one last time. "I know you will," Ethan replied. Chloe slipped in behind him, saying nothing, only nodding resolutely at Jonathan. They began to crawl into the darkness. The journey in the air duct was torture. The smell of dust, mold, and hot metal filled their faces. Ethan. He couldn't use his legs. He had to drag them, each movement a sharp, horrific jolt of pain, as if bone were grating against bone. But he didn't cry. He focused on Chloe's breathing ahead of him. Chloe. She was relentless. She was Ethan's eyes, his legs. She drove her frail body forward, trying not to think about the screaming metal cutter behind them. The cutting noise grew closer, reverberating like thunder in the metal. In the panic room, Jonathan Riley and a recovered Marcus Hayes prepared to fight. The cutter stopped. A massive metallic crash. The first section of the steel door fell inward. "Mr. Sterling," a calm voice echoed through the gap. "Come out. We want to negotiate." "Negotiate? Who is running this?" Jonathan roared. "You'll know soon enough, Jonathan," the voice replied, laced with a terrifying familiarity. "In fact, you've known him for years." The door was completely breached. 6 figures in tactical gear stood in the flashing light of their flashlights, guns trained on them. The leader removed his mask. Jonathan felt the world tilt. The blood roared in his ears. Standing there with a familiar, cruel smile was Marcus Thorne, his business partner of 15 years, Ethan's godfather, the man he had trusted more than anyone else. "Hello, Alexander," Marcus Thorne said, his voice now carrying a chilling indifference. "I guess we have a lot to talk about regarding Sterling Tech, your foundation, and how your son will help me legitimize my global operations." "Marcus," Jonathan whispered, his voice cracking in horror. "I knew 6 months after the boy was kidnapped," Thorne said, adjusting his collar. "Your grief, Jonathan. It made you careless. You signed over control of Sterling Tech to me without reading the fine print. A tech company with international shipping, perfect for human trafficking." The pain of betrayal was greater than the fear of death. "I'd rather die than help you," Jonathan yelled. "Oh, I know that," Thorne sneered, glancing outward. "But your son won't. I have men at the ranger station. He'll be captured within the hour." Suddenly, sirens blared. Not local sirens. They were the unmistakable federal sirens. "FBI, drop your weapons." Marcus Hayes, who had slipped out of the panic room immediately after securing Ethan, appeared with a team of FBI agents. The air duct didn't just lead to the ranger station. It led to an emergency bunker where Marcus had established contact with federal investigators earlier. Ethan and Chloe had succeeded. Thorne aimed his gun at Jonathan's head. "I walk or he dies. Shoot," Jonathan said, his voice eerily calm. "Ethan is alive. He's free. You lost Marcus." Detective Riley, with lightning speed, disarmed Thorne. The traitor was handcuffed, his face white with defeat. Jonathan stumbled out of the cabin, breathing the cold, dawning air. He saw Ethan and Chloe wrapped in blankets sitting on the hood of an armored vehicle. "We did it, Dad," Ethan cried, trying to stand and falling. Jonathan ran to them, embracing his son and the girl who saved him. They were survivors, and this was just the beginning. Dawn arrived not with peace but with a horrifying confirmation. As the FBI and police armored vehicles escorted Marcus Thorne, the treacherous CEO, away from the safe house, he maintained his cold arrogance. Jonathan Sterling's world had been turned upside down. Ethan and Chloe, wrapped in thermal blankets, were taken to a secure FBI facility. The raw air of survival was still present, but fear had been replaced by a heavy exhaustion. Thorne's arrest launched an investigation of unprecedented scale. Thorne wasn't just a trafficker. He was a criminal social architect who had used Sterling tech as the perfect camouflage. FBI agents and Detective Riley immediately conducted simultaneous raids. Within 2 weeks, Thorne's network and the remnants of Victor Knox's organization collapsed. Dozens of high-level individuals, politicians, judges, and wealthy businessmen, the buyers of Thorne's premium goods, were exposed. Justice was no longer just the Sterling family's private battle. It became a national media earthquake. More importantly, the raids led to the rescue of 56 trafficked and confined children across several states. The number was far greater than initially anticipated, proving the brutality and scale of Thorne's network. Jonathan no longer felt the need for sleep. He channeled his grief and betrayal into action. "Every child found is a time I see Ethan crawl out of that dark alley," he told Riley. "I can't stop." For Jonathan, the greatest victory wasn't seeing Thorne in handcuffs, but witnessing the complete breakdown and confession of Dr. Olivia Vance, the traitor. She revealed every detail of the network, a final attempt at redemption to restore value to the children she had helped sell. Ethan's recovery only truly began when he was moved to a specialized rehabilitation center far from Seattle. Physical recovery was a relentless battle. Ethan underwent 3 major surgeries to repair the damage to his legs. Daily physical therapy was torture. Every step was a painful struggle between will and flesh. But Ethan had an advantage, Chloe. Chloe wouldn't allow Ethan to pity himself. "Don't cry about the leg," Chloe said when Ethan collapsed during his first attempt to walk. "Those bastards wanted you to never run. Every time you stand up, you break their rules. You treat this like a victory badge." Even if Ethan's legs might never be entirely normal again, a slight limp was inevitable. It was a scar of survival, not a badge of shame. Mental recovery was even tougher. Ethan wrestled with recurring nightmares, a fear of bright lights, and an instinctive distrust of adults. One night, Ethan woke up trembling. Jonathan held his son close. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "I don't like chocolate chip cookies anymore. The smell makes me sick. They fed us cookies before they sold us like we were pets." Jonathan felt his heart clench. He understood. The memory of happiness was tainted. "Son," Jonathan said, his voice gentle yet firm, "I will never make you eat another cookie. You are not that 5-year-old boy. You are not an object. You are a survivor." The reconnection between Jonathan and Ethan unfolded slowly through small acts. Jonathan spoke of Catherine, the mother constantly searching for him, proving her love was unwavering. He spoke of his own mistakes, admitting his adult helplessness. Ethan started to laugh. Not a forced laugh, but a genuine one often sparked by Chloe's sharp-witted jokes. "We're a mess, aren't we, Dad?" Ethan asked once. Jonathan smiled. "Yes, a beautiful mess. But we are our mess. We will figure out how to be a new family together." Jonathan decided that money couldn't just be used to protect his son. It had to be used to save the other children the system had abandoned. He founded the Sterling Lighthouse Foundation. The name wasn't random. The lighthouse was something Ethan and Chloe designed together, a symbol of hope in the storm, a place where lost ships, the lost children, could find safe harbor. The foundation didn't just provide money. It offered an unprecedented holistic care model. Trauma-informed therapy, with therapists who were survivors themselves and understood the depth of the trauma. Education and life skills, helping children learn how to trust and reintegrate into society. Advisory Council. Ethan and Chloe were appointed to the Youth Advisory Council, using their survival experiences to shape the programs. Jonathan leveraged all his resources, reputation, and wealth. His actions were not charity. They were a personal journey of atonement. The last thing to complete was the easiest for Jonathan, yet the hardest for Chloe. "Scared?" Jonathan asked Chloe as they stood outside the lawyer's office. Chloe, now in clean clothes, her hair neatly trimmed, but her eyes still holding that street vigilance, nodded. "If I'm trouble, if they change their minds." "They won't change their minds," Jonathan said softly, pointing to the door. "This isn't charity, Chloe. This is our salvation. You saved Ethan. You taught him how to survive. You are the only person he completely trusts. You are part of this family, kiddo." Inside the room, the papers were signed. Chloe officially became Jonathan Sterling's daughter. The moment of tears. Chloe never cried while living on the streets. But when Jonathan hugged her, she wept. Not tears of pain, but tears of stability and acceptance. She was brought into a family once and for all, 6 months later. Jonathan's mansion had been redesigned. There was no more deadly silence. Instead, there were sounds. Jonathan sat on the balcony looking into the living room. Ethan, who could now walk with a cane, was teaching Chloe how to play chess, a skill Jonathan had taught him long ago. Chloe was cheating brazenly. Jonathan offered a genuine smile. It was the sound of normalcy he thought he had lost forever. He walked into the master bedroom. Ethan was sound asleep in his bed. No sedatives needed. No nightlight. Just peace. Jonathan placed a hand on his son's forehead. "I love you, my little prince." Ethan's eyes fluttered open, looking at his father for a moment. "I love you too, Daddy. Thank you for never giving up." Jonathan kissed his son's forehead. He walked out, looking across the hall to Chloe's room. He opened her door. Chloe was resting peacefully on her large bed, tightly clutching the filthy teddy bear she'd found in a dumpster long ago. Jonathan smiled, a look of profound pride on his face. "And you too, my lighthouse," he whispered, closing the door. They were survivors. They were warriors. They were a family finally safe ashore. And that is the story of how 2 survivors, 1 CEO, and an old medallion finally exposed a 7-year-long crime. I hope the emotional journey of Chloe, Ethan, and Jonathan has shown you the extraordinary power of courage, even when it comes from the darkest places. Marcus Thorne's betrayal may have broken a family, but their love and resilience ultimately forged a new, stronger one. What moment of Chloe's bravery impressed you the most? Or what do you think of Ethan's powerful transformation? Let us know in the comments below. I love hearing your thoughts. If you found this story meaningful, please remember to hit like and share this video to spread the message of hope and justice. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next thrilling and profoundly human real-life story. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you in the next video.